open your mind.
Hello and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday, the 15th of July, 2018, and we've had a bit of rain today.
Yes.
Which is a little bit of a change.
Depressing.
No. It's good. We need a little bit of rain just to get the grass green again. But let's hope it goes back to the sun because we are enjoying the good weather. Right, okay. Our guest on the show tonight is a chap called Derek Condit, and he's an organic beekeeper. And as we talked about before on the show, we've always said, they've said out there that if the bees die off, mankind or humanity only has 4 years. And we'll get into speaking to Derek about, what that is all about and how important the bees are and what he's doing his end. And obviously the products in the stores at the moment, the honey products, are they genuine or are they just full of chemicals? Well, we'll speak to Derek and we'll find out about that. But before we crack on with the bits and pieces that we have to talk about, let's find out what the communication channels are.
Okay, communication channels, folks.
The communication channels are email info@oymIreland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Yes, thank you, Mary. The OYM chat room can be found at OYMradio.com. You will see the link there on the left-hand side for the chat room if you are a registered user. You can pop your username and password in and log in. And a big hi to everyone who's already logged into the chat room. You're very welcome. We also monitor the chat room on People's Internet Radio.com as well. And a big hi to everyone also logged in over there. Everyone, you are all very welcome. Also on our website, you will see all the usual links to the various channels at YouTube. We also have the email address info@oymradio.com, which is the email address if you want to give us a shout and let us know where you're listening from, or if you enjoyed the show, or if you didn't enjoy the show. We also have the link there for Skype, the anti-social media, Facebook, and also the Twitter as well. And if you're on MeWe, do look us up on MeWe as well, and join in the fun and frolics over there. We also have a link on the website there to the TuneIn Radio application. That's a free app for your smartphone or your iPhone where you can listen to us all day, every day. Alan.
Brilliant stuff. Right, Steve, you're going to kick us off.
Yes, I am. We have some news in from the Liberal.ie, and it says the Shannon passed new bill to declare January 21st as Irish Independence Day. Ireland will have its very own Independence Day after a motion submitted by Fianna Fáil was overwhelmingly passed in the Shannon. The new commemorative day, which will be marked on the 21st of January each year, has been introduced to mark the first sitting of the Dáil in 1919. However, those of you hoping for a bank holiday on the 21st will be left disappointed, as the government confirmed that the day will not be an official public holiday. It is expected that the Senator Dr. Keith Stanwick's bill will now go before the Dáil ahead of the summer recess after it was overwhelmingly passed in the Shannon last Thursday. The date is a significant event in Irish history, as it's seen as the first ever meeting of the Dáil at Dublin's Mansion House. So yeah, that's it. We've been kind of talking about that for a long time now. So a lot of people are going to be very happy about that.
Which we've known about it, and we've been down there, the turning of the Sovereign Seal down at the Mansion House. We've been down there a couple of years ago. We went down. So yes, so happy Independence Day on the 21st of January. It's going to be official, which is good stuff. Right, okay. The PortugalNews.com. President approves medical cannabis. So this is obviously in Portugal. Portugal's president has approved the use of medical cannabis, but warned that it could be declared unconstitutional should it result in extra state spending. The use of medicines, preparations and substances made from cannabis plants was approved in Parliament back in June following a bill tabled by the Left Bloc and the People and Animals Party. Only doctors will be able to prescribe medical cannabis, and only do so when other conventional therapies have been shown to have adverse or unwanted side effects. Well, that's a step in the right direction, because Malta is doing the same thing. We read out a story there a couple of weeks ago about Malta doing the same thing. So it's good to see that it's actually doing the rounds, and countries are now looking to legalise medical cannabis. So
yeah, and as we said during the week, I mean, it's been on mainstream media now a lot. Over in the UK, the BBC have done quite a lot of reporting of incidences where children suffering from various diseases are having seizures 100 times a day, and once they're getting treated with the medicinal cannabis oil, the they're getting better. They're on the mend. The symptoms are fading away. So there's a lot of positive public pressure, I think. And so we might see the same thing here. We did say a couple of weeks back that Leo Varadkar and the Irish government are also considering looking at this as well. And I think it's not before time. So yeah. Anyway, we move on. Can we just advise people to be very careful joining any spiritual groups, as a lot of them have been compromised. So you really need to do your research before joining. Anyway, you have the power and the abilities within you, so you should be looking inside you and not an external group for answers. But if you do join a group, make sure their intention is right.
Very, very important. There's a lot of compromised groups out there that say they're one thing, but they're another. So just be very, very careful if you're joining a group that they're actually doing it with the right intention. Just a bit of advice there. We had the United We Start radio marathon yesterday, and it was a great chat. We had myself, Steve, Detlev, Michael, and Matt Navarro on, and we were talking about all kinds of subjects and all kinds of things. Very interesting. So if you want to listen to the podcast, it's up there on the website. If you go over to unitedwestart.org, that's where you'll find the podcast. Steve.
Yeah, we also got to do the very first run to the Trim Food Bank with Aisling there yesterday, and thanks to the listeners who bid on the auction. We have Ken's Food Bank for struggling families to sort out in a few weeks' time. Okay, yeah, we hooked up with Aisling Lowe yesterday. Aisling is now running the Trim Food Bank, and we hooked up with her. We went to a local shop. We had 3 trolley loads of groceries to help the homeless people that she's actually helping in her local area. Now, Aisling kind of was part of a bigger group, and she was kind of doing a lot of work in Dublin, but that was kind of oversaturated. There were too many people involved with that, so she just took a step back, started her own group just to kind of help people on a more local level. And that's what we done yesterday. So we went down, done the 3 trolley loads. We got a couple of snaps, a couple of pictures, a couple of photographs, and they're up. I think they're up on Facebook. And she's doing great work, and we wish her a very continued success.
She has a great shed. She has a little shed with all shelves and freezers in there that need to be wired in, but all the shelves have some food on them. So it's really great the way she has it organised. So well done to Aisling for doing that for struggling families down in Trim and surrounding areas. How's your week, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely nothing to report from my week. I've been very busy work-wise and just doing some stuff around the house. You kind of have to, every now and again, you have to have the clear out and get the skip and clear out all the old, out with the old and in with the new, as they say. But the highlight of the week actually was looking forward to the marathon. Now, I know Alan's he's an old hat at this marathon business, but I haven't done one since we used to do the United We Strike one. But since United We Start actually kind of struck up and has been getting great reviews, I have to say, I haven't been in a position to sit in on one, but I did have that opportunity yesterday, and I have to say it was most enjoyable. It was a 2-hour show, same as our own show, and it absolutely flew by. As Alan read, he did say what guests and what hosts were actually in situ at the time, and I have to say they're a great bunch of people. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm already looking forward to the next one. There we go.
That's it. Okay.
That's it. How's your week?
Right. Okay. Well, just before we bring Derek on, a big thank you to John Irwin for sending us over a signed copy of his latest version of his book. It's a hardback, and it's much more than the original book. There's more stuff in it, more information he's revealed in this update, in the revised edition. And he does talk about, in the book, the Nephilim, as mentioned in the Book of Genesis. And if you don't know who the Nephilim are, go to the Book of Genesis and type in Nephilim. You'll find out who they are. And apparently, a couple of these people were people that he had to assassinate. Interesting in the book. Are we endorsing John's book? Yes, because I've read the first one, and it was a brilliant read. Great information on his life in this elite group that he was in. So definitely looking forward to reading the extra bits. Now, if you want to know a bit more about John, you can go to his website, which is ucsdefence.com. That's DEFENCE.com. Or if you want to order a book from John, you can email him at john@ucsdefence.com. Please don't buy the book from Amazon, because the money doesn't go to John. There's a bit of publishing issues with another publisher, and he's publishing John's book, but the money's not going to John. So if you want to get the book, email John direct. That's john@ucsdefence.com, and he'll be able to sort out sending you a book, payment and all that. And the other thing, last thing on the list was, I'm sure everybody's saying the Trump and the Queen. And fair play to him and Melania didn't bow to the Queen. Why should he? What makes her so special? Just because she's the Queen? I mean, that's very 3D thinking. People saying, oh, that's disrespectful. Well, no, it's not, because who is she? She's just a human being like all of us. Just because her tribe years ago beat up another tribe, we're supposed to bow to them? No, that doesn't work. So fair play to him. Plus the little, when he was walking out and she was behind him and he was like, he got in her way and she had to walk around him. That was brilliant. I thought that was very good. Fair play to you, Trump. Fair play to you. Right, okay, let's bring our guest in. Now, before we bring Derek in, actually what we're going to do is Steve's going to give us a breakdown on his bio and his background.
Okay. So many pages in this book. Okay, we have a bio. Derek is from the US of A. He's from the state of Washington, located deep within the Cascade Mountains. This is where Derek maintains what has come to be called the shungite beehives. He has been a chemical-free and treatment-free beekeeper for 3 years. After discovering the stone known as shungite had the ability to attenuate harmful EMF signals, he has continued to expand his shungite knowledge base and incorporate shungite into the beehives in various ways, all in an effort to protect the bees. Derek's website is www.shungitebeehives.com, is where he instructs and provides detailed material on how to begin your own shungite beehive. In addition, you can visit shungitehoney.com, where you can purchase a wide range of shungite honey and honey-related products, and we will have all those links up on the chat rooms very shortly.
Brilliant stuff. Good evening, Derek. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Great stuff. Thanks for coming on. Now, we found out about yourself from Walt Silver, who was a guest on our show a couple of weeks ago. Walt and Nancy came on and we were talking about shungite and all the benefits of shungite. Before we get into that, let's talk about your bees and your beekeeping and what was going on before that. How come that you got into beekeeping and the problems that you were facing before you actually came across using shungite? Tell us about that.
Sure. So we can go back to my first year of beekeeping, and I pretty much experienced what you read often on the internet, with everything from colony collapse disorder to infestations from parasites such as mites to there's various funguses that can invade a beehive. And I had every one of those to one degree or another on one of the beehives. And it's a struggle for beekeepers to just keep the hives going, because when you start the beehives, pretty much everywhere you go for an education, they talk about chemical treatments to take care of these problems I'm mentioning, rather than, maybe an alternative organic treatment. So in our first year, we ran into, again, we had, actually, at the end of the year, by the end of the season, we had complete losses, as well as all the other beekeepers in our area. A lot of them are written off to what's called colony collapse disorder, where the bees just don't return. And we had some of that as well. And again, this was pre-shungite usage. And then we also had various parasite issues. As I mentioned, mites are a big problem for bees. So we pretty much encountered everything that can go wrong with the beehives in that first year.
That's and obviously we've heard this story about if we lose the bees, basically mankind or humanity only has 4 years. How true is that? It depends on your sources, but I think it's absolutely true to one degree, because the bees clearly pollinate such huge amounts of the food resources that the humans eat. There are other insects, but they don't pollinate to the degree that bees do. And there's of course many types of bees, not just honeybees, but mason bees and others. But it would devastate the food production, because not only the fruits and vegetables that people are thinking of, but other items that we feed to the livestock for those who do eat meat, then there's an issue there as well. So it really is. It would cause a collapse of the entire system in a really, really rapid time. Now, the die-off of bees, is there some kind of seasonal effect with the bees where they'll die off or they hibernate, or I don't know much about them? And do they hibernate, die off, or how does it work year on year?
Sure. So in the fall, what it'll be, so let's talk about honeybees. What'll happen is the better part of the colony will be female worker bees, and then you have the queen bee, and then the drones. And the drone bees, the males, they don't collect honey or pollen. They're pretty much there for mating and protection. So in what we're talking about, so in the fall, as the weather starts getting colder in your area, the females will pretty much just start killing off the drones. They'll attack them and kill them and shove them right out of the beehive and get rid of them, because they're basically during the wintertime when they don't need the protection because there's not as much going on activity from other competing beehives, so they don't have to worry about invaders or robbing. So they kill off all the males, and then the females pretty much hunker over for the wintertime and keep the brood, which would be the baby bees, and the queen warm through the winter months.
Okay, so when we see the honeybees in our garden and they're flying around, would you normally say that they are either part of an organised hive, like somebody like yourself, or would they have a hive somewhere in a tree or in a wall or something?
Okay, now that's going to be relative to where the person would be located. So if you're, of course, going to be in let's say a city environment, there's actually a lot of beekeepers that keep beehives on the top of roofs. There's some issues with that, with chemicals and whatnot coming in from the atmosphere. So if you're in that sort of environment, where it's more urban, the odds are it's going to be a beekeeper, because there's only so many trees that would have an empty hole large enough to hold a colony, sort of thing. So if you go out further, out in the countryside, we'll say, well, then the odds are it's going to be a natural bee, unless you're near a known beekeeper, because bees will travel approximately 7 miles from their beehive to get resources if needed. So if there's plenty of flowers within the first 2 miles, clearly they won't need to go further, but they can travel approximately 7 miles. Okay,
that's a hell of a distance for a bee. Plus the fact that the laws of physics, I think I'm right in quoting this, says that a bee should not be able to fly.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I've done a little research into that online as well, and it's pretty interesting. There's lots of theories on that out there. Some that the shape and such of their wings or whatnot, and then the vibration, the frequency they emit can somehow levitate a portion of their weight, and then they use the wings for the other. So there's some talk about that, and yeah, that's a fascinating topic, though.
Yeah, it's interesting that they say that, according to physics, the bees can't fly, but nobody told the bees. Which is interesting. Okay, so what's the situation now at the moment? We know we're getting chemtrailed and all the poisons in the atmosphere with the bees and everything else. How is that affecting the bees and affecting the pollen and all that?
Okay, well, how that's affecting the bees, it's not necessarily outright just killing the hives. So as they spray chemtrails above here, the hives drop dead. But what it is doing, and I imagine it's doing pretty similar things to us, is weakening their immune system, making them more vulnerable to diseases, parasites, any additional chemicals that might be in the environment, or the EMF frequencies and Wi-Fi signals and then cell phone signals as well. So it makes them weaker so that they can't fight off these other issues. Again, similar to us, bees can only handle so many outside hostile, be it frequencies or chemicals, before they can't take care of themselves. So what would happen is, because of these, whichever it is in the environment, be it chemtrails or frequencies or all the above, which is usually the problem, the bees are not at their peak health state, so they have issues keeping the mites. So for one example, they would remove the mites, which mites are just small parasites that are actually clearly much smaller than a bee, and they walk all over the bees. So the bees, if they're healthy and strong enough, they'll remove the mites from each other and take them out of the beehive. But if the bees are, struggling and they're worn out and weak, unhealthy, they can't do that. Then the mites get out of control, the numbers overtake, and then you can lose a beehive to mites. Or if a fungus gets set in, depending on your environment, if it's a more moist environment, you can have a fungus or a mold set in the beehive, and they can clean that out if it's caught in time and they have the energy to do it. So a lot of things go wrong. Just think, if you never cleaned your house, what would happen, and never had the chance or energy, things would go south pretty quickly, and that's pretty much how it compounds. Okay, and worldwide at the moment, we talked just a few minutes ago about the demise of the bee and humanity, but what's happening on a global scale at the moment with beekeepers? Are you hearing that this is a major crisis at the moment, and like beehives and bees are dying off? It is, because I'm in touch with lots of organizations and local beekeepers, and actually around the world now. It's definitely not new. So what they're I guess I should say generally terming as colony collapse disorder is just the loss of the beehives. Now they're clumping a lot into that because they could have died from mites or lots of other things, or just not showing up back to the hive. But it is definitely an issue. I relocated here recently, just the last few months, to a different area of the mountains where I was last year, and the beekeepers from the area was in 2017. They had 100% losses of all of their hives from, again, just a plethora of issues. With disease, colony collapse disorder, all the above. So it is a huge issue, and that's happened every year within the various associations I'm a member of, or just groups online, or local beekeepers. They've all, I would say, 50 to 100% losses of their beehives year to year, and that hasn't changed at all, other than going up each year slightly.
Right, okay. And the honey that we're getting, somebody said to us that the honey that we're getting in the shops is not really good organic honey. It's more chemicals than anything else. Can that be confirmed, or what's your understanding of that?
Yes, that's unfortunately there's a lot of we'll say quote honey coming in from overseas. Well, they'll actually bring it in on tankers, and a lot of it's not even honey whatsoever. It's high fructose corn syrup that they've mixed and, made it appear as honey. So I'd be really leery of buying honey in grocery stores or Costco or anything like that. Just be sure and read the label and make sure there's nothing on there but pure honey. And then even that, which is why we're, again, as you mentioned, we're chemical free and treatment free. So we're big on no chemicals. And often, it's in the high 90 percentile of honey that's sold to the public is gathered from beekeepers that are commercial beekeepers that have their hives located on various pollination grounds. So, for example, in the state of California, there's a big there's many almond orchards just throughout the state. So they'll take bees there, but they'll also spray those almonds with chemicals and herbicides, pesticides for other bugs. And the bees, of course, will bring this back with them because it's on the pollen, and then the nectar back into the beehive, and that's transferred into the honeycomb, which is then transferred into the honey you're eating. And there's no way to remove that. So I believe it was this year the FDA here in the U.S. actually put out a study showing 100% of the honey they tested had chemical contamination in it from one source or another. So and that was one issue, and that was even if it was pure honey. So what I would suggest is maybe find a local beekeeper or someone that's quote organic, because that term is hard to reach in some places because of limits put on it, but at least look for the term treatment free or chemical free, where they wouldn't be, which is what we don't do, is to help the bees, which is their thought, is give them chemicals to boost the bees' immune systems and to get rid of the parasites and help them out. Well, much with the pharmaceutical industry, where's that gotten us? That didn't work out too well. And it's doing the same with the bees. So that's why we don't do that. And then all of those chemicals transfer into that honey. So now you have the dirty honeycomb frames, which passes through to you. And then to go even a little bit further, the processing of their honey, so even if it's a portion of real honey cut with the sugars or high fructose corn syrups, it's going to be in a chemically treated container or jar. So I would watch that as well. Make sure you go glass. There's a lot of factors if you want pure, good, what's sometimes called medicinal honey that you can use. You can eat it as well, but also topically. So you want to make sure there's no chemicals. And that's what our honey is. It's called medicinal. So if you were to put it on a wound topically, you clearly wouldn't want a honey that had chemicals or pesticides or herbicides from somewhere, because you'd be introducing it to your system directly. So just be really careful. And again, it's generally known as chemical or treatment free. It's not real large right now, but that's the type of beekeeper that carries the cleanest honey.
Okay, Steve.
Yeah, Derek, what's your thoughts on the Manuka honey? Because we've heard some great things over here about the Manuka honey, and I've tried it myself. It's not very often, I might add, because it's nearly 4 or 5 times the price of the other stuff. But that's supposed to be absolutely fantastic. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Manuka honey is a good honey. The thought process behind that would be the enzymes that are in the various saps of the trees, because bees don't just gather from flowers. They'll go to trees and get sap, and they'll make various products inside called bee bread and different things. So Manuka honey is a great honey. It's not the only honey, and it's not. It would be, how do I'm trying to think the best way to term this. So it's not the best honey. Many honeys from different areas can reach that standard. Again, as long as you ensure the bees are harvesting from a clean source with no herbicides or pesticides, no chemicals, and then the trees that they're getting from. So again, actually, eucalyptus, as we've recently found in our area, is a great source for bees to gather honey for medicinal reasons as well. So it's really looking at the source. So as long as those Manuka groves aren't being treated, so you can't just think Manuka honey, great, across the board. No, you definitely need to look at the source of that Manuka honey and then make sure it's not a percentage cut with something else. But if you get the right Manuka honey and you know it's from a chemical-free area and packaged right and processed properly, which would be unpasteurized and raw, so in essence it's not cooked to where you kill the good stuff in the honey, which would be the enzymes and all the microbes that you'd want. So there's factors in there, but yeah, it can be good honey.
Is there any way that we can do a test on the honey that we buy to see whether it's good or not? Is there any testing we can do?
Yeah, there is actually. So what I would do is here's a real easy one. Honey will crystallize, it'll harden if it's pure honey. Now that's not talking chemical free, of course, but if it's pure honey and you want to make sure it's not, cut with something else, or the sugars I'm talking about, it'll harden. But to do that test right on the spot, what you can do is just get a glass of water, have it lukewarm, not excessively cold or warmer. Just take one drop of your honey, drop it in the glass, and let it sink to the bottom. If it holds together, holds its structure as a drop, for the most part, the holding of it, it's going to be pure honey. Now, if it starts to dissolve right away and kind of lays out and flattens or dissipates or dissolves in there, then you've got the fake artificial honey, or at least a portion of it in your honey.
Okay, that's good. That's interesting. I think we should repeat that at the end of the show again, just to let people know about testing the honey, just in case, because that is interesting. Now, we have a few questions coming in the chat room, but we do want to get into talking about the shunga, because I know there's probably one or two people going to be listening to this show, whether it's the live show, the pre-record, or the podcast, I should say, who are beekeepers and would be interested to find out what you did to solve your problem with issues with your hives. But just to mention as well that it sounds like to me that, if you're going to get honey, try and find a local beekeeper who's doing the honey and buy organic or buy local rather than the mass manufactured honey, because then you're going to get the genuine honey. So tell us about how you came about using shungite and the reasons why you got the shungite.
Okay, sure. And so we're in our second year now. I actually started beekeeping and became fascinated with shungite around the same time frame. But I didn't immediately put the two together. It just didn't occur to me until the next year, which would be 2017. Now we're talking. So I got into beekeeping. I'm in my second year. I started researching shungite, got involved with a couple of people, and you mentioned them before from CosmicReality.net, Nancy and Walt. I spoke to them and Stephanie as well. And there was actually all of us getting together as a group, and then we'd spoke, and it just kind of came around during a conversation that, why not? Because they'd evidently the year before they'd looked for beekeepers that were willing to try shungite. And that's kind of a hard mix to find the right combination of that. So it just happened that, we met and they brought up that to me. So we actually had this on video as well. It's kind of interesting. I walked right out with, I think I was with Stephanie at the time, and we just put the nuggets out in the entrance of the beehive, and that started the whole shungite beehives experience, and it kind of snowballed from there. So we watched, we observed, we saw, because often bees will remove foreign objects that are placed on the entrance. So I thought they would do that right away, and I might have to secure these little stones, and I wasn't sure they would even do anything, because I was open-minded, as I am, but I thought, we'll see. I understand shungite because I've had it for a while myself before trying it with the bees. So I was impressed with it on many levels. So it made sense that it would benefit the bees. So we went out and tried it, and as the weeks progressed, the bees would not only not remove the nuggets, but they would be drawn to them and prefer to walk over them, whether they're coming or going from the beehive colony and gathering pollen. And then even by the end of the season, we noticed they actually glued down the nuggets to the entrance. So it's called propolis, a glue that they make. So pretty much to ensure that they wouldn't go anywhere. And then they just continued to go from there. We would try different experiments with shungite nuggets, powder additives we'd give in trays. We would paint the beehives with shungite paint at different times. We just started the experiments from that point. And
obviously there's a massive benefit with the shungite. What do you think the shungite is doing?
What I think it's doing, and what it appears to be doing, is it's actually, when the bees are in this, what I'm calling, quote, kind of here, a shungite environment, and I feel the same myself, because I wear shungite, and I have for a couple of years, but it's actually given them an environment. The bees, it's relative, so on the time of year and where you're at, but let's just say the bees are in their bee colony, their beehive, for 50% of the time approximately. Well, when they're in that, then that means, and if I can protect that environment with shungite, and they're not out in the environment getting either contaminated with chemtrails or sickened by the various frequencies and cell phone signals. So when they're home, it was often the theory of, it's called a Faraday cage that the military uses and others, where I'm sure you're familiar with it, and your listeners as well, but so you place basically encompass electronics with a wire mesh. There's lots of ways of doing it, but protect it from outside signals and harm. So in essence, that's what we're doing with the shungite. And there's actually, on an interesting note, scientists doing the same thing, and there's studies that we publish at shungitebeehives.com, where you can see this research that we've republished of scientific studies, where they do shungite in much the same way as I'm mentioning as a Faraday cage. So in essence, we have the bees protected in their beehive when they're home, because in this example, we'll say they're in the one where we've added shungite powder to the paint, painted the beehive, so they're in that. And we found that's not completely necessary to paint them, but we tried different levels of things. But with the nuggets there, so in essence, they're in a protected environment where they can remain healthy and not have to fight off the outside illnesses and, again, frequencies. So they're a stronger state when they leave the hive for that other 50% of the time. And that's pretty much how it's worked out. And then another quick note is, at times we'll place small trays of shungite powder at the entrance. So as the bees leave, there's a negative and positive attraction between the powder and the bees on their legs. So, and basically think of their legs grabbing a small shungite piece of powder, their own little pendant in essence, flying out into the environment and taking that with them. So there's all of that going on.
It's amazing how they know, how nature knows what's good and bad, and they know that obviously the shungite is good. I like the idea that you can put the shungite powder in the paint and paint it, because now I don't know what the cost of the shungite powder is, but if you're doing your house, I mean, if you live near a telecom mast, and these days most people do, to be honest with you, they're near enough, most people, or some kind of mast. But if you're getting your paint, I know the RF paint costs, it's ridiculous money anyway to get the RF paint. It costs a lot of money. So if you've got shungite powder and put that in instead, it just might be the solution that people need, the cheaper solution, just to try and ward off these negative energies and the frequencies from the telecom masts.
I agree. I think that's a great idea. Some people have gone to the extreme of buying thousands of tiles, so think like a tile for your bathroom floor or kitchen counter of shungite, and place them, and clearly that can be cost prohibitive. But we've had great results with as you mentioned, the shungite powder in the paint, and then I've done a wall in a room here, because we have basically our circuit box, our main power box, is on the other side of that wall. So what I'll do on the bedroom, exact opposite from there, is do the shungite paint, as you mentioned.
And does it, in our house, if you put the powder in the paint, does it actually change the colour of the paint?
It can. So I've done it. We have photos online and video of this because a lot of the beehives are white. So there's a way to break down the powder, and that's mixing it with a little bit of water first and then adding that to the paint. And if you don't do that, you'll get what I actually kind of prefer, and you get small black streaks in the paint as you do it. And that's fine because you don't have to get 100% coverage through every inch of the paint. So either way, you can mix it with water again beforehand and then mix it with the paint, and then you won't have the streaks. And it will slightly change the color if it's a white, but if you have any other color, of course, it's relative to how much powder you put in there. Mm. So I'll give an example. Approximately, you can go either a teaspoon to a tablespoon, depending on the strength you want, of shungite powder per gallon of paint.
Okay.
So there's an idea to work from. So we've got it down to a teaspoon from certain powder that we now have to get from CosmicReality.net in our paint that we've put on the beehives. Okay. And that's how we do it.
Okay, so over here, if we said a teaspoon of shungite powder to every litre of paint, that would be near enough the equivalent.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that works just fine.
Okay, well, folks...
And there's regular powder.
Yeah, well, when you're buying your shungite, where do you buy it?
Actually, I get all of my shungite, again, from the folks at CosmicReality.net now, because they have a verified source and distributor in Karelia, Russia, so it's verified that it comes from the right place. I ran into issues a few years ago purchasing shungite on eBay and receiving, fake shungite, something else passed off as it. So I do get all of mine from there because it's a trusted source.
I did order some bits and pieces from our website, and it claims it's from Russia, and they do necklaces and they do the whole shebang, and it looks genuine to me. It looks fine, and I ordered a few bits. They're only fairly cheap, but I don't know how we can test it to make sure that it's the proper stuff. Do you have any ideas or tips on how to test it?
Sure, we've and actually on YouTube at the Shungite Beehives channel, I put a small video. Now there are other. It's not the end-all, be-all, but one quick and easy way to do it would be what we call, or is called the flashlight test, where you can just take a small flashlight where the very end of it comes off where the spring would be. So it'd have to be a certain type of flashlight where you could place a small shungite nugget or whatever you bought, a pyramid, in between, so have it touch the last battery and then that spring, and then try and turn on the flashlight. And if it comes on, then that tells you there's enough conductivity between that piece of, hopefully, shungite, real shungite, that it does that. Because if it's a piece of charcoal or another black rock, onyx, or whatnot, it's not going to conduct electricity like that. So the, quote, flashlight test is a real, down and dirty way to do it for a quick test.
Okay, do you know about that, Steve? You said?
Yeah, I've tried that. I've actually done that because I think some of the one of the shungite pendants that I have at home, I actually done that. I tested it. I done the flashlight test just to prove to myself that it was genuine. Because the same scenario there, like I bought some stuff from an online store as well, and it was they claimed to be in the Karelia region, and it's supposed to be genuine shungite. So obviously when I bought it, I bought a small quantity, and then of course I had to test it, and I was happy to say that it was the proper stuff.
Maybe what we should do, Steve, is make a little tester for shungite, just for a little kind of thing we can put together. So any time we have shungite, depending on what you buy, you can just put it in. Because if it's got to do with just connectivity or to conduct electricity, I mean that's going to be fairly easy to put together. I know you have the flashlight test, but if you had a little device to actually do all different shapes of shungite, it'd be quite good, wouldn't it? We'll have to put something together.
Yes, you will.
Oh, yes. There you go.
Yes, we will.
Designation again. Okay, so that's brilliant about the shungite. Buying it, I think, is the important bit. I have said to people, if you are going to be buying shungite, just do your research and check the website you're buying it off to make sure. And obviously, this is the test. When I get the stuff I've ordered, when that comes in, I will do this flashlight test to make sure that it's okay. If it's not, I'll be sending it back and asking for my money back. So, have you contacted other beekeepers, Derek, about this, or have they contacted you to find out what you're doing? Because obviously they might be having the same problems with their bees.
They have. Actually, we've been working with beekeepers, again, all around the planet at this point. So we've got, well, let's talk here in the United States. There's probably a couple hundred honeybee hives that are people that are using shungite on. But in addition to that, we're working with a local, actually happen to be local to me here in Washington State, called Crown Bees, and they work with the mason bees. So those don't bring back honey, but they're much better pollinators than honeybees. So we're working with the mason beekeepers as well, and they have the shungite on several hundred hives in various states. But then also, there's a group in Australia that is working with shungite, pretty much trying to reproduce exactly what we're doing here, and they're having real similar results.
Brilliant.
All across the board. Yeah, so it looks really good.
Yeah, I don't know anybody I can't say that the beekeepers over here, we haven't heard any beekeepers actually using shungite. We are speaking about shungite and the benefits of shungite more and more on the show and getting the product in. The powder, as I said, is a good idea. Now, shungite there's no option with shungite. There's no kind of organic, ingestible shungite that you can take. I think it's all for external use. Nobody can really recommend because it's not FDA approved. So no one can say that. There's a lot of people that are ingesting it for the benefit of, or the perceived benefit, how it depends on where you fall, of the C60 molecule, which would be the quote magic molecule within shungite. But there's a lot of people ingesting it or the manufactured equivalent of it with really good results. But again, at least here in the U.S., unless the FDA says it's approved for human consumption, then of course nobody's going to say it. But is it being done? Yes. Is it safe? I guess I would be really sure, again, of your source of shungite, where you're getting it. And there are studies out there where various labs have analyzed the shungite and the shungite powder from sources, and they'll give you the breakdown of what's in it, and those are available online. Now, we had Walt and Nancy on the show, and we talked about shungite, and if memory serves me well, Steve, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but nature has a vortex. Everything in nature is a clockwise vortex, and when man makes the likes of freezers and fridges and cookers and Wi-Fi boxes and everything else, that's anti-clockwise, which goes against nature. And my understanding from what we spoke to Walt is that what shungite does is changes the anti-clockwise to clockwise and resets that. And also, by doing that, is protecting you from the energy waves. Is that your understanding of it as well?
Yeah, that's exactly my understanding. And there's even studies showing that, again, on the same research tabs at shungitebeehives.com, where it shows that they're feeding it to cattle, to chickens, to mice for various reasons. And the free radicals that are loose in the system, which can gather and cause other illnesses and diseases and cancers. So, and shungite has shown in these studies to change those, and attenuates the signal and basically gives it the proper spin and removes those dangers from whatever has taken it. And there's some, like I said, interesting studies, but nothing done on humans yet, but lots of rats and various animals where they've shown exactly that. And that's how we believe it works too, with the bees, just externally because the bees aren't consuming it.
That would be interesting if they did a test on a cancer patient to see if it had a positive effect, and if it would actually do anything. That's interesting because the C60 we've heard about, we've talked about on the show before about the C60, and there's two kind of camps on this. One camp is saying it's very beneficial for you, you should take it. Another camp is saying that you shouldn't take it because it's not supposed to be ingested. Now that could be just the powers to be not wanting people to consume or ingest C60, but we have come across this, and there are products out there that you can take with C60 in it that are ingestible. As to the benefits of it, maybe we can get somebody on who's actually taken C60 and we can speak to them. That would be a good idea. If you know anybody that's actually taken C60 and has benefits from it, give us a shout. If you're, for our listeners, get them to email us at info@oymradio.com, and we'll have a talk with them, because that would be interesting to find out about how their experience is with C60. And then, we put them on there and have a chat with them. Now, the shungite, when you do the shungite for the beehive, Derek, do you actually have say, shungite in the four corners of the beehive to create that kind of Faraday cage effect?
No, initially we just take 3 small nuggets, for example, maybe the size of the average person's fingernail, so not real large, and just set them next to each other in a small pile off to the side of the entrance. And that's all you really have to do. And then that has enough of an effect on that bee colony and the bees coming and going past that to work. We have expanded and, again, worked in the powder to the paint, so there are additional hives that have paint because we wanted to see, something to compare it to, see maybe the numbers exploded on that hive relative to this one. And then more powder on one hive in a small tray as they're coming and going, then another. So we've done all the different experiments. But and how it kind of really breaks down is all you really need to have would be the nuggets. But if you wanted to, say, expand that bee colony and have them, it's called a supersedure or a split it into another hive. What we found was to take some of the, and so it's now called shunga bee powder, and it's on cosmicrally.net. We put that in a small tray at the entrance, and that seems to generate, I'm not sure how to determine it, but hyperactivity, and they start producing queens. So after placing the powder there, and there's a normal time frame depending on the type of bee we're talking here, where there would be a gestation period for queen bees to be produced, and after that time frame, then we would just all of a sudden start seeing that, wow, it started as a supersedure. There would be more queens produced. We would have swarms, so the queens would leave and take some of the bees with them and expand out into the mountainside. Basically use it as an expansion method. And if we didn't, and the bees are expanding really quickly on their own without the powder, so we would actually have to not give the powder often because it was kind of getting behind on the game there, keeping up with the beehive splitting.
Okay, so it's 1 queen per hive, yeah?
It is generally, yes. There can be a second one sometimes if it's a large enough hive and they don't get close to each other, because there's different types of beehives out there, but generally. And then when she gets weak or the bees sense her pheromones are weakening or she's laying weak brood patterns, they'll go ahead and start producing queen cells that look like small peanuts inside of the frames and make new queens, anywhere from 1 to a dozen. And then reproduce her. So when the first one emerges, the new queen I'm talking, she'll go and kill the old queen, and usually all the other queens, and that's how you would replace the queen naturally.
Well, there seems to be a lot of killing in the bee bee colonies, with the drones being killed off the men and then the queens, quite violent. But that's nature. That's the way it is. That's the way it works. Right, Steve, let's go off to the questions there and we'll go through the list.
Well, the very first question I have is something that I discussed with I think it was my son, about 2 weeks ago. He was talking about a bee, and he was afraid that the bee, I think he's seen a bee, and he was afraid that the bee would sting him. And I said, oh, well, sure, if the bee stings you, he'll die afterwards. And he kind of looked confused. But is that true, actually, Derek? Because it's something I heard as a child, that a bee can a wasp can sting you multiple times, but a bee, once they sting you, the sting actually is left in you and it comes out of them and then they die. Is that true?
That's true for honeybees. So if it's a honeybee, and there's many, many types of honeybees, when they sting you, it's a death sentence. They'll sting you, and basically, as they pull away, their insides come out, and it continues to pump the venom into you. But if it's a mason bee, let's say, they're just little tiny pricks, kind of like a mosquito bite. You barely feel them, and they can do that multiple times because think of more of a bite. So it really depends on the bee. But if we're talking honeybees, which is mostly what people see out there, it is a one-time deal, but they're not gonna. The thing is, bees don't want to die, so they're only stinging you and you don't know it. So they're not going to land. If they're landing on you, let's put it this way: they're going to come on you for the salt in, say, you're perspiring. So that's why they would land on you. It's not that you just walked by them, unless you're near a colony or a swarm had just happened or something like that, where there's something, or somebody's run like a lawnmower, a power tool nearby them and agitated them. Bees don't want to sting, so you've either stepped on them or interfered or blocked their entrance to their hive and you don't know it, or something like that. And if they're just landing on you, they're not going to try and sting, unless you start swatting at them, then you will sting. But generally, as I mentioned, they're just trying to get the salt from your skin.
Well, that's quite interesting, because I actually had a similar instance during the week. I was doing a bit of DIY out in the back garden, and I was perspiring or sweating like a pig, as they say. And I noticed an increase in flies, and the flies just wanted to land on me. And I go, what does this fly want? So now I know what he wants. He wants the sweat of my brow. Well, anyway, that's we'll leave it at that. Anyway, Dougie is wondering, can Derek explain the ozone shungite honey treatment, please?
Sure. That actually came as a request. That was somebody else's idea, customers who had brought the idea of ozone to me. Which ozone, it's a whole topic on itself there. And they use it for killing harmful bacteria and viruses and all sorts of things. It's used in dental treatments. So what it was, they requested it to be run through the honey. So we'll get it's a little aerator stone, much like a fish tank, and we have a professional grade ozone machine that we purchased, and you basically cycle, depending on the amount of honey, for so many minutes through the honey. And again, that's not for everybody, because it will remove some of the good enzymes as well, but it will remove the negative ones if there were any in there. So it's more of a preference thing. For example, if I was eating our honey, I don't use the ozone on it myself, but if somebody's, uses the ozone treatments, we just wanted to make that available for them.
Okay, that's cool. It sounds interesting. And Peter is wondering, how do you keep the shungite powder dry and out of the rain, and where do you put it? I think that's we did have a picture earlier on. We posted up there of the hive with the shungite nuggets to the right, and it looked like a little vial or a little dish of shungite powder on the left.
Sure. That's that would be just an example of a little so it's a silver dollar coin holder is what it is. We kind of take apart, so it's like a little tray, like you said, dish. So we'll put the powder in that, just under a gram of the powder. And on the picture you're referring to, it's a sunny day with no wind, so that wasn't an issue. But if it is a not so sunny day, we just slide the tray right inside of the entrance, so it's within the beehive itself and nothing falls on it. And then just if it's a windy day, we just simply don't do it, of course, because otherwise you're going to lose too much powder being blown away. But if there's a chance of the rain, or you're in an environment where it's much like ours in Washington State where it rains a lot, we'll just push it inside the entrance. There is how we'll do that one.
Okay, and did the bees ever show any interest, I mean, in the powder itself? Have you ever noticed them kind of going over, maybe, walking in it, or you just maybe curious as to what it is, or do they just ignore it?
Oh, sure. They'll, and we have various Facebook groups, shungite beehives and whatnot, where we have lots of video of them doing that. They'll actually go to it and just walk through it. Just as I mentioned, they do the nuggets. They're drawn to it. Not just the bees. We have dogs here in our house. My dog named Bee will take the shungite nuggets out of her water bowl and just kind of gnaw on them. It's all animals, not just bees. And in the powder's case, the bees do get drawn to it. You would think they would avoid it because, well, obstacle. Why would you climb over this obstacle and through this powder when you can just walk a half inch around and get inside? But that's not the case. As you sit there and watch, and again, it's on video in various places online, the bees can go toward it, and they don't avoid it, and they'll opt to climb the small mountains to them, or hills, of the nuggets as they return. Again, where they could just walk around it, but they prefer to do their little shungite bath or shower as they return and leave the colony. It's really interesting.
Of an image in my head now of do you ever see a dog when he's out in the back garden and he's happy and he's rolling on his back and wriggling around, kicking his legs? Like, I imagine the bees will be doing that in the shungite powder. Anyway, Graham is wondering, does shungite have any effect on natural predators like hornets for the beehives, or are they attracted to it at all?
That's a hard call because they're in such, the hornets and wasps, because we use shungite in our beehives, they're so healthy and we have no losses and no sickness. I wish the best of luck to any hornets or wasps that now show up on the shungite beehives, because the bees are so healthy, they pretty much get attacked right away. Yeah, so
they get their asses kicked. Yeah.
There we go. That's putting it the way it goes. So, in the bird bath, which I now call the bee bath, so, just cement bird baths we have out in the garden for the bees, because you want to provide water for the bees. The wasps, and we have shungite nuggets in the center. So in essence, shungite water we're providing them. Well, what we have found, and again, video of all of this, the bees, the wasps and hornets, and the birds will all drink from that bird bath at the same time with the shungite nuggets in it. And they should all be, because the wasps eat meat, they eat bees, is what they're doing. They'll actually go at nighttime. They wait till the bees are all in the house, and then they go at night. We watched this last night. The wasps and hornets will go under the beehive where some dead bees have been removed from the hive and just kind of shoved over the entrance. The wasps and hornets will go grab those little corpses and fly away with them. And generally, their job is to go grab a bee, fight it, take it away, and feed it because they're meat eaters. But they won't do that. The shungite, they'll wait till everybody's in the house and then pick up after that. So I guess it affects them in one way. They all get along, that's for sure.
So humans are going out to grab a bear, hornets are going out to grab a bee. Anyway, in relation to the nuggets now in the water, have you ever kind of done a study where you'll have, say, 2 dishes of water, one with the shungite nuggets and one without? And is there a preference? Like, would you notice that the animals would be drawn to one, say, over the other?
Absolutely on that. I have 2 bee baths, we'll call it again, outside right now. One with we're doing that exact experiment, and they're probably 5 feet apart, so no appreciable difference. So it's not like they have to fly further for the other one. And it's nearly empty, the one without the shungite nuggets, and then the one has all the activity on it. And I'll have this on video as well because that was kind of fascinating. We do give them the shungite water, and it's all the little critters come and get it, so they must prefer it.
I'd like to try that with, I've got a cat, and it's worthwhile probably getting a few nuggets, and I'd like to see what happens. Get 2 bowls of water and put one with the nuggets in it and see what happens. Yeah.
No,
it'd be interesting.
It would be quite interesting because, I mean, the fact that it has so many benefits, and if it's not going to do any harm, I mean, obviously we have a small dog at home as well, a Jack Russell. And, we do give them filtered water. We don't generally go to tap water. The water is kind of reverse osmosis filtered. It's probably not the ideal solution, but it's a solution, to the crap, to remove the crap that's actually in the water. But I suppose maybe, we could invest in a couple of nuggets, throw them in there as well. Because it's not going to do any harm. And actually, Dougie said earlier, if you drank some, and this is obviously of the powder, if you drank some with water, what would happen? Would you just pee it out? Or is that something you can talk about there?
Oh. Well, water, okay. The nuggets, so if you say it's powder in, and so you actually ingested it. Well, let's use this example, because our animals here, I have an elderly dog that's about 15 years old. He's large, so that's pretty lengthy life for this size of dog. Well, every day we give him the shungite the shungite honey with added powder. And so he's had that for probably a year now. So he has been ingesting it. And I'll touch back on that in a second, but it's stated in these documents and studies we have online that there's a 10-day period where if you ingest the C60 molecule or shungite, it's in your system before it comes out, you excrete it one way or another. And with the animals, we've seen this elderly dog, because you'd mentioned whether it's ingestible or not, so I can't really speak to the human ingestion, of course, for a lot of reasons. But as far as our animals and our pets here, the dog it's like it's taken years off of his life. And I was kind of skeptical because I understand the energy and blocking the frequencies and all of that aspect. But as far as internally, it's had an effect on his eyes from the cloudiness being removed probably 90%, and then him just being able to get up off of his dog bed and move around and play again. It's been miraculous from that, and that's with the shungite in the honey. So he's been ingesting it that way.
Well,
so it definitely has an effect.
The shungite stones, I have read or seen somewhere that what you're supposed to do from a human point of view. Now, I don't want people, this is just what I've read or seen, but don't take it for gospel, do your own research. I'm not responsible for anybody doing this. But the idea is if you get a bottle of water and you put the shungite, first of all, wash the shungite stones. Just take any dust or debris off the stones. Give them a good wash, alright? And then put them at the bottom of a water bottle, and then put in your clean water, either your pure water or your filtered water. And then that's it. Just drink the water. And that's, you get the benefit of the stones at the bottom of the bottle. And just drink the water. That's what I heard. Now, I don't know if it works or, but I was reading somewhere and that's what they said that you should do.
That's how we understand as well. And I'm actually probably in my third year of doing that. There's lots of studies showing that from Dr. Emoto. There's lots of names for it called structured water or M-state water. But yeah, it's drinking the water. So it's depending on if you're in the city and you have tap water and maybe they put a lot of fluoride or chlorine in there or other things like that. I would try and, I'm not saying it's going to filter that out, but I would get the shunga in there to at least, get what beneficial qualities you can in that water. But we do, as you mentioned, so for example, we have a water filter in our fridge, a pitcher with a filter on it, and then nuggets in the bottom of that. And you can actually taste the difference when it's in there. It's, I'm not sure how to explain it, but maybe smoother or softer tasting water. It's almost like they've been filtered over, they're called salt systems in our area, but it makes a difference. And we have, and you also mentioned about possibly doing a test with nuggets in the water of the pets. We have done it with our cats and dogs. Just drop a couple nuggets in their bowl, and they absolutely will go to the bowl with the nuggets, preferred over the other one, and at least in our case.
That's something that I think I'd be up for doing a test on. You've got a dog, drinks water, so...
I do, yeah.
You know?
I mean, when you see the prices of them online, I think they probably import them in. The post and packaging seems to be dearer. But if we're going to do this experiment and we're going to get the nuggets and we're going to use it ourselves, but primarily we'll say for animal use because we can't really say anything is for human use. But I mean, obviously we would have to go for the C60 ones over the regular shunga. Would that be fair to say, Derek?
The C60, what are you referring to? Because the C60, that's a and then you also mentioned consuming either one of them. I wouldn't consume myself, a manufactured version of C60. If I was to do it, I would find a certified, verified source of that shungite powder, and then look at because there's different types of powder. There's regular and then elite or / noble. It's called different names, which would have a higher percentage of the C60 molecule in it. So I actually stay away from anything manufactured myself, which is, hence why we're treatment-free and chemical-free. So I'm a little leery of that portion of it.
Okay. Just
something. I think I lost track of what you're asking.
Yeah, something just popped up, and just in relation to the powder, something just popped up here on the chat room from Peter. Thanks, Peter. Peter's actually in Australia. And he says 2 kilos on eBay would cost me about $500. From the mine, it cost me $68. That includes the postage. That's amazing.
2 kilos for 68.
2 kilos, yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that sounds right.
Well, the Shungite Factory is the website I use to buy the necklaces and the bits and pieces. But I'm just interested now, if you could experiment and test it where you could set up a kind of Faraday cage around your house, where you had shungite stones in each corner of your house as a way of just protection, whether that would work, because some people buy crystals and they put a crystal in each corner of their house to set up a kind of a little perimeter of protection. So maybe the shungite stones might do the same thing. But the trouble is, there's no way of really testing it. That's the only problem.
No, but I mean, No, sorry. Go on, Doug. Derek. I was just going to say, some people that have actually used it, and either the stones or the pendants, they have said that they have noticed a difference. I mean, obviously, if you were to get something and put it, I mean, you would probably notice a difference.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know, Derek.
Yeah, I was going to say, people do that with shungite. They make what's called, there's various names for it, but orgone devices, where they'll make it with shungite in them, and often they'll actually purchase our shungite beeswax, where we have our organic beeswax, and we'll mix in shungite powder, and we'll turn that into candles and various other products, but that'll be purchased by people who make these devices, melted down with nuggets of shungite and crystals, like you mentioned, and then they'll put those at the corners of the property, and we've done similar here.
Okay, that's interesting. There's just no way that I can think of testing it. That's the only thing. I mean, yeah, some people who are electrically sensitive will actually might pick it up and go, yeah, I can notice a difference, but we are not, so we don't pick it up.
Do you remember you did tell me a couple of weeks back about the lady who who came into the house?
That's right, yeah.
And she said to you that she noticed that there was a lovely feeling, very calming feeling. I mean, if you were to get some shunga and actually just bring it to this lady, maybe she might be sensitive to it. You could ask her, and if she noticed something coming off it, a feeling of whatever, That would be testimony enough, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I could ask her. I don't know whether she's electrically sensitive, but she picked up on the energy in the house anyway, so that's a good sign. Now tell us, Derek, about the bees. Is there anything that we are not told as consumers of honey that we should know about? I know we talked about the honey and the chemicals and the fructose syrup and everything else. Was there anything else that we should be looking for or be aware of when we go into the local high street store?
Okay, I guess it'd be kind of the opposite of what you would think. So often people think about honey as being the natural alternative or whatnot. So they're going to it for what's in it, not realizing that as I mentioned earlier, about the whole not having it pasteurized. You want it raw. And 90+% of honey is pasteurized or raw to remove the enzymes, which is the reason you wanted honey in the first place. The antimicrobial, antibacterial. There's all kinds of beneficial qualities to it. So if you're buying from these manufacturers, again, often it's pasteurized, so all of the good stuff's gone. So in essence, you're just eating another form of sugar now. Granted, it's not manufactured like granulated sugar where there's aluminum picked up through the processing of it all, but still, there's that issue of the good stuff being gone. And then I would look really carefully at where and how it's packaged, if you can find that out. But then the how it's packaged part, you can see it. So those little plastic bears, I'm sure you've heard of BPA. So often those, more often than not, are not BPA free. So then you've got chemicals leaching from that into the honey, and if those are transported on, let's say, a truck across country. So this brings us back to local, stored the proper way, and treated right during not only the harvesting of the honey, but the bottling and the extraction of it all. And so I know it can be overwhelming, but that's why you also mentioned find your local beekeeper, talk to him or her and see how they're doing it, and that'd be your best bet. That
would be interesting. Have you ever seen where they're selling the honey and they have like a honeycomb in the jar?
That's funny you mentioned that. We're doing that right now. So we had a custom device made on one of our beehives. There's just like a tray, and then a lot of holes cut in it, and we have mason jars slotted on top. So we have 12 in our case. So what I did was take a little bit of our shunga beeswax, melt it down, put it in the bottom of the jar and let it harden, and then turn that upside down. So now as the bees fill up the boxes of the hive below, the frames of honey, and I have video of this we put online, they come up through the hole, enter the see-through mason jar, and you can see them building the honeycomb from in essence, top down. And then when they're done, you can cut off the entrance and basically put a lid on the jar, and you have honeycomb in a jar.
That's great. You'll have to send us over these videos, Derek, so we can have a look at them, and then if our listeners want them, we can email them out, because that sounds interesting. To even just watch the whole process of it, to see how it's done. Honey's been known for years to be very medicinal, especially when it comes to burns or scratches or sores on the leg. Obviously the chemicals or the enzymes that's in the honey is important. So I think people need to, obviously, as you said, be aware that, the shop or honey or the cheapy honey, you have to be careful and find an organic beekeeper. I'm going to actually do that over the week. I want to actually hunt around my local area anyway to see if I can find any organic beekeepers who are producing honey, and see if they're selling it in local markets, because we talk about, the organic side and buying organic and getting back to nature as much as we can. And honey's no different. I do think that we have to do that as well. And it supports the local beekeeper as well, rather than going to the manufacturer store and selling the mass-produced honey.
I'd mentioned also, like I said earlier, bees can go 7 miles from their beehive to collect. So, and clearly the beekeeper can't control where the bees are going. So if that neighbor does spray their fields or crops or even their garden with, various chemicals, then those bees can bring that back. So the further out, the better. And again, in our case, it's a great environment because we're in the middle of the mountains where there's no crops of any kind, and they basically get the wild foliage. So that's even better that way. So there's because even the neighbor right next door, if they're spraying the rose bush or something, well, the bees are going there, they're going to bring back a percentage. And again, that's why the FDA here in the U.S. found 100% contamination in this honey they tested.
Yeah, well, we're in the country, so it's not too bad.
Perfect.
You mentioned earlier about the rollout of 5G and Wi-Fi and all that. Have you come across any experiences or any experiments regarding the danger to bees with this technology?
We have. I've read lots of studies on it online and seen articles and shown it and experienced it myself, from everything from taking, in the very beginning, cell phones out to the beehives, putting them on tripods, and then tying that video in to, say, live broadcast on Facebook for people to see, compared to having the cell phone not connected to service, but recording the video and then uploading it later, and then how close. So I can see firsthand the disruption to the bees, and or if we're talking about the group of hives, I had various locations or friends with beehives, so if they're near a cell phone tower, I can, and I know how they're treating the bees because we talk, I can see the differences there on, like, for instance, maybe they'll have 40% of their colony not return over a portion of the season, and the only difference would be they're near that cell phone tower, or something like that. Okay,
that's interesting. If somebody wanted to start their own beehive, what do they do? How do they go about it?
The easiest way is, and I would start off right away by saying, don't be intimidated. I held back a few years thinking, oh, I need to know this, that, or the other, or join all these groups and have this. Don't. It's not that complicated. And if you go the organic treatment route, it's not like you're opening the hive every single week to get in there and disrupt the bees. You don't need to. They're healthy. They take care of themselves. So in our case, we went to what's called a local co-op or a farm store, something like that. And they have little, and you can buy them online, just a little bee starter kit. They're between $100 and $200. They come with a box and the smoker and a few other items you can use to start. I would just get that, find your local natural, organic, lots of terms there, beekeeper, and try and get they're called nooks. So it would be a starter hive. It's about half of a beehive, so it'd be 5 frames. And they'll sell those in the beginning of the season, spring. And then you'll take that and branch off of that. And then pretty much you're just going to put the bees in the starter box and let them be. Because I promote and hope others go the treatment-free route, then, again, you don't need to get in there and give them. Often it's certain types of acid they actually vaporize in the beehive to get rid of the mites, not realizing that acid is getting in all these open honeycomb frames, contaminating the honey that they're selling to the customer later on. So just get that starter nook, or even the local beekeeping association. You can go to their meetings, and if not, say you're out in deep, well, I would just get online on YouTube and go to various sites. There's treatment-free beekeeper channels. Go there and just start listening. Just listen to the videos and get encouragement there and the how-tos. But it's really easy.
So how do you get the female and the drones, and where does all that come from?
Okay, so if you're starting, then in that nook you purchase, which would again be a half a beehive that somebody has split and sold you, that's going to contain about 3 pounds of bees. So we're talking about 20,000 bees maybe, and then there'll be a queen bee included in that, and that'll be all closed up. So you'll take it from where you bought it, take it home, wait a day for them to calm down, and then basically take out those bees and frames, just grab them with your hands and put them in your new hive with some additional empty frames for them to fill. Put your lid on. And that's really all there is to it. And then as needed, the bees will make a new queen when necessary, and just start expanding from there.
And when they produce the honey, is there any cleaning or processing or pasteurization or what needs to be done, or can you just take the honey straight from the hive?
No, technically you could just go up to the beehive, pull out a frame, remove the bees and stick your finger right in it and eat it. So the only treatment we do would be, for the honey we sell, you remove the cappings, so the very tops of the honeycomb, so the honey can pour out in essence, and then we spin it in a machine that just extracts the honey, and then we go from there. So the only other processing would be a light filtering to get out the large particulates of honeycomb that maybe fell off. But other than that, no, there's no filtering. All the enzymes are left in, and no heating of it at all either. Okay, so do you use UV lighting for any bacteria? No, we don't. Actually, the only bacteria that's in honey is the good bacteria. They've found honey that's over 8,000 years old, and it's still edible now. So as long as you have the chemical treatment-free honey, you just leave it alone, and it'll sit for thousands of years in a bucket in your room.
Okay, something that we are told regarding juicing. You know, when people are juicing for healthy, you know, cabbages or carrots or apples or whatever, and you have the magic bullet, which is a centrifugal juicer which spins very fast, and then you have the masticating juices which are very slow, like when your teeth, when you're crunching food with the back of your teeth, that's masticating the food. Now, if you're spinning the honey, we were told that high-speed centrifugal juicers actually burn off the enzymes, and they're not very good. So, is yours a slow or fast spinner?
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it'd be a slow one. We have a manual spinner, so we actually just kind of hand crank it there. We're much smaller scale, so if you're talking commercial, there's big processing plants where they spin it, you know, just really fast and get it out of there. Ours is much slower because we don't want to damage the honeycomb, because otherwise when we reuse these frames, because you use them a couple of seasons, you don't want the bees to have to go through all that effort the next time of rebuilding the honeycomb. So we will just extract the little bit we do and not damage the honeycomb on it with a light spinning, and then give them back the frame, it's called, with the honeycomb still intact. And often that won't happen with commercial. They'll just take off all the honeycomb, sell the wax, make the bees rebuild everything. So it kind of depends how you handle it.
Okay, and what about, do you clean down, do them frames have to be cleaned every, 1 or 2 seasons, or how does that work?
Yeah, it really depends who you are, but we won't use the frames more than 2 years. Average beekeepers will go about 5 years, and that's when you see frames that get really dark, and dark wood, because that's contamination, that's feces in there, that's all sorts of things in there. And you don't necessarily, you know, I wouldn't want my honey stored in something like that, so we prefer to have just the pure honeycomb, and we don't use, there's fake honeycomb you can buy made out of plastic some beekeepers use, but again, we're all natural, so we let the bees make their organic honeycomb, and again, not more than 2 seasons for ours, so they always look brand new, basically.
Okay, and the honey, we've said earlier on about the benefits people are putting on sores and wounds and stuff like that. What have you heard that people have used honey for, you know, when it comes to healing?
Sure. We've had lots of feedback on that. And even something, so we're talking externally now, everything from eczema to psoriasis, and this is within the family, and in addition to many, many customers, burns is a great use for it. Somebody had, a couple of them actually, had MRSA. Basically, they were hiking. MRSA is pretty much everywhere anyway, so they picked up MRSA from a hike and it got a skin infection. Topically, placed the honey on there. And have done that. There's all sorts of, again, I think I mentioned the cuts and wounds, and if you have bacterial infections, the good bacteria in the honey will, you know, overpower the bad, and basically it'll take care of that as well. We've had great results on animals. With the problem there is, of course, getting sore for my dog, not letting them to lick the honey, so you have to wrap it somewhat, but it works fantastic on all sorts of injuries. If you have a cut, I'd say the cut, because we've had a couple of, a cut on my foot, so we put honey on one and not the other, and it was at least, you know, 50% improved healing on the one with the honey relative to the one where I didn't put the honey. And then there's lots of anecdotal evidence. Some I probably can't get too much into because of how they're using it online, but there are people that make various eye drop formulas out of the honey, and that's been done for, I think, probably a couple 100 years. They take mixtures with water, and put in their eyes for various things. That can all be found online. It has been used for that. So it's all sorts of things. And then again, internally on animals, with great results across the board.
That's brilliant. And what about, do you think that the honey is an alkaline? It must be some kind of alkaline if it's doing that.
Yeah, it's I'm not really sure of how the pH varies in the honey. It's not a whole lot, even from the harvests. It's pretty steady, but it really is just that beneficial bacteria and the microbiotics that the organisms that are in there, pretty much just taking care of the bad ones. And that's why honey's been used medicinally for thousands of years, for just that reason, for every reason, ailment I mentioned. Yeah, we're not inventing anything. It's just bringing it back out. Sounds like.
I'm just wondering, Derek, if you got litmus strips, you know, you can get them litmus strips for checking the pH. Because what I've done it with green tea and water, where basically you have a glass of water, you dip the litmus paper in, and it gives you the pH, and then you throw in some sodium bicarb, and it increases the actual pH of the water. I'm just wondering if you could use them litmus strips with the honey to see if the alkalinity changes either with the honey direct or when you put it in water. You know, do a glass without the honey, do the litmus strip test, and then put the honey in it, and then do it again to see if the alkaline changes or the pH changes.
That's interesting. I've done the test because I actually have the strips you're talking about, but then also a digital meter, pH meter, so I can actually stick it in there. And I've done that with the honeys to test various degrees, and with the shunga added, but not specifically as you're stating, just to see if you add it to the water to see if it changes that. But we can test the honey. It's a little difficult with the strips because of the way the honey, of course, sticks to it. But you can do the digital meter that are pretty cheap online and test it that way.
Yeah, okay. Steve, you want to jump in there?
Yes, we have a couple more questions. Peter was wondering, how far apart should he put shungite nuggets into the ground to make a shungite grid around the house? He's wondering. He said he has 12 in the ground at the moment. Would you know, Derek?
Yeah, there's that's getting a little bit of a different topic there, but there is from my perspective, what I would do is I would look into something called sacred geometry, and if he's got those nuggets, I would find the sacred geometry symbol that he wanted, and in fact, C60 molecule is one of these shapes. So he can bury, and I would say just 6 inches under the ground would be just fine in the dirt at whatever points of symbol he wanted to make with these. So, and then bury them about 6 inches would be the answer. And I know I'm being vague, but the sacred geometry is a big topic. Oh,
it certainly is. There's a lot of information in relation to that. Actually, there's a chap, I can't remember his name, I know he's dead now, but this is really off topic. I watched a video about him a couple of years back, and he talked about monotonic gold, sacred geometry, monotonic gold, and all sorts of stuff. Very interesting stuff. Actually, he looked like a bit like David Bowie. Anyway, Graham is wondering, does the guest know about fullerenes in the shungite? It's my understanding that fullerenes are made in the cosmos, and this is where the antimicrobial and anti-EMF properties originate.
Yeah, that's so. What the fullerene is actually the C60. So you kind of almost interchangeable names there, or buckyball, but they're talking about in essence the soccer ball shaped molecule that's within that, and it does need to have extreme conditions to be made, and it's generally thought, and it's my belief as well, that it was this particular source of shungite or fullerenes was made in space and brought in, and they've shown, basically an asteroid. So it was made in the vacuum of space and then fell as an asteroid to Earth, and then that's where it came from. And it can be made in various ways. Again, the manufacturer, they're shooting carbon with various high-powered lasers to manufacture. So it can be made other ways, but the one from Curly Russia, I think it's pretty generally accepted as from space, and they've identified it as an asteroid landed there. So, but it can be reproduced.
This asteroid that landed, this is what we've heard, that it was an actual asteroid. How big was this thing? Because if everybody is buying shungite, this must be a massive asteroid.
Oh, sure. Well, asteroids come, the size of small planets or moons. I mean, the size of a mountain coming down is way back when, and then landing there, and that would cover the whole area. And there's video of the shungite, Karelia, Russia, where they're actually mining this. You have to dig pretty deep online, but you can see the extraction processes and how much. And there's an actual lake there. So there's a shungite lake that's just surrounded by shungite boulders, and yeah, it's pretty interesting. It was large. So
is this kind of finite then? Are we going to run out of shungite when we actually, mine the whole lot?
I wouldn't think anytime soon. It looks like the quantity is pretty large, and there's great possibility that there's other locations across the planet, because who's to say it's just that one. Clearly the odds say it isn't the only one, or the only one that came down to Earth. So maybe it's just the one we're familiar with now. There are other places that found the fullerene, but it's not called shungite because it's not from that location. So that's kind of confusing. If you're talking shungite, it's going to be that portion of that type of rock from that location in Russia. But if you find a similar, fullerene or C60 molecule in a rock from somewhere else, technically it can't be called shungite, but it may pass the shungite flashlight test that we talked about earlier. So it gets a little confusing in there, but there are other locations. But in essence, there's only one shungite location, and that's the one where you know that it's legit, and again, known not to be asteroid.
Okay, we're looking at the website Shungite Factory. Is that where you got your stuff, Steve?
No, I got mine from another place called Shungite Life, or well, I think it was shop.shungitestore.com.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. There was actually a comment in there in relation to honey. I wasn't going to read it out, but I suppose I will censor it. Well, Peter said he made a mix of honey and virgin coconut oil to address an issue that his girlfriend had on the lower part of her body, and he said it worked a treat. So, yeah. Thanks for that. Thanks for sharing that, Peter.
No, that's fair play. I don't know whether that's the same Peter that told us about when you had a urinal infection and you used the lemon and the sodium bicarb in the water.
That's right,
to actually clear that infection, which is again a great thing to do. I've actually been doing that, by the way. Every now and again, what I do is I have the bottle of water, right? So it's obviously spring water, and I get a lemon and I just squeeze the lemon and I get sodium bicarb, put it in the bottle, and it's just a cleanser for my system. Once a week I do that, and just, to put it through your body and just kind of cleanse your system, So it does no harm at all. I know it's off the beaten track, it's not what we're talking about tonight.
No, actually that's kind of a good question now. I don't know if this is Derek's area of expertise, but I mean that little concoction that Alan just spoke of, where he will get kind of the spring water, a little bit of lemon juice and some sodium bicarb. If he was to put some shungite rocks into that, or nuggets into that as well, Derek, would that kind of improve the whole process, or would there be a reaction?
I don't think I do similar here, but I use sodium bicarbonate, but I'll use apple cider vinegar and various other mixtures to adjust the pH internally. And I have added shungite water to that. I didn't see any noticeable difference. But again, there are various, how would I term that? Parts or particulates in water that the scientists, again, are using shungite to attenuate the harmful effects. So if there's something harmful in your water, you may not necessarily taste it, but the shungite, so it's definitely not going to hurt, I'll put it that way. But I did not notice a flavor difference or a pH difference when I added shungite nuggets to my, we'll call it, mixture of apple cider vinegar and baking soda.
So are we talking on a kind of quantum level then? That if you're not, tasting anything different, or you're not noticing anything different, and if people do that with the water and put the shungite stones in, that obviously we've no meter that we can put on to check it. So it must be working on some kind of quantum level.
Oh, definitely, yeah, because it's not actually filtering anything. It's not like activated charcoal filters or anything like that, where it's so porous that it's going to grab this or that particulate and hold it from going through. As we talked earlier about the spin, as the water around the nuggets is there, it's going to basically have that reverse spin and become more biocompatible and better for your body. So your body's going to recognize it as water and be able to absorb and process more of it than it would have if it was not in a shungite environment. And we see the same, again, with the water we give to the bees, and then the honey after the fact, because the bees process the honey. So we like the term, I don't know how official it is, but biocompatible, and that's how it comes across.
Yeah, because that's obviously, if it does change the vortex and the animals are drinking the water and they prefer that water, then it must be changing the vortex of the water or some way to, instead of anti-clockwise to clockwise. Why it would be anti-clockwise in the first place, I don't know. I know Joan has a question there for me on the chat room, and she said, how much water, lemon and bicarb, Alan? Basically a bottle of water, and you get one lemon from your local shop. Okay.
So is this a 2 litre, 1.5 litre?
Oh, just a normal bottle, small bottle of water. The hand bottle of water.
Right, so about 500 mils.
Yeah, 500 mils. Yeah, just a normal handheld bottle of water that you'd buy in the shop. And basically get a lemon, cut it in half, get the juice out of the lemon, pour that juice into the bottle, and then just a little, half a teaspoon of bicarb in the bottle. And that's what I do. I don't know, whether I need to add more lemon, or use less lemon, or add more bicarb. That's all I do. And basically I just drink that, and I just use it to kind of flush the system, really. Run it through. It'd be good for your system, good for your liver. Any potential probably, infection or whatever, I'm sure it's doing good anyway, because, and I know, if you look at these people that go in and make their own homemade cleaning products, they will actually use lemon and bicarb to do the cleaning as well. Because of the acid in the lemon and the alkaline, in the sodium bicarb. So you could use it as a cleaner. So if you think about it, if it's used as a cleaner and it's very effective as a cleaner and it's natural, then it must be doing the same thing to your body. And I suppose, you know, if you went down the MMS route, MMS is probably doing the same thing in its own kind of way, because people said, oh, MMS is bleach. But, you know, again, in small doses. So obviously the lemon, the bicarbonate water, is doing the same thing, and you can use that as an external cleaner if you're cleaning your top or cleaning your bathroom or whatever. Put it in a spray bottle, and that's a very organic way to clean rather than using chemicals.
And of course, the added benefit is your urine glows in the dark now too, doesn't it?
Hey, there you go. It doesn't need. It smells nice. It smells of lemon. Sorry, we're getting off the beaten track there. I'm sure honey could be used for the same thing, Derek. It's some kind of organic cleaning. There must be a way of using it for that. I don't know whether you've come across that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, what we've worked in other products. So we make a shungite honey soap where there is some of the shungite honey in there mixed with pink Himalayan sea salt and then shungite powder, and then have it mixed in with some of our skin balms and salves as well. It has, again, that is getting it topically within the different mixtures, and it works really well for that on all sorts of issues. It does work that well. We use apple cider. You mentioned the cleaning products. So we do similar to what you mentioned, but we also use the apple cider vinegar, and that works well as well. Yeah,
I'll have to pick up some more apple cider vinegar. I need to update it. And you have to get the right one, folks. If you're getting apple cider vinegar, make sure you get the one with, I think it's mother in it, and it's organic. Get the right one. And you just put a little, you know, if you have a drink of water or whatever your tipple is, if it's lemon or whatever, just pop it in a bottle with it as well. It won't do you any harm. A little bit of apple cider vinegar, good benefit there. So what's the plan of attack for you, Derek? What's on the agenda? How many hives did you say you had? Sorry.
It depends on the day of the week you're asking, because right now, in the last week and a half time frame, we've had 5 different swarms. So we have 5 beehives at the moment that we're actually keeping in an area, but those 5 have duplicated, so they've all split at least one time over the past week and a half, and 4 of the 5 just basically went into the mountains to help the natural populations and expand those, so that's all great news. We need it. And then one of the others, my son and I actually were able to catch and put into another hive, so now we have another one. So any time we can expand the hives to more or less, but for what we're doing, we only need so many, so we don't need a whole field full of beehives. We keep it relatively small numbers.
So when you say you catch, I assume you mean catching the queen to put her in there.
Well, that's interesting. What we'll do is, just a couple of days ago, my son and I, and because the shungite to the beehives, when it's around them, it really calms them down, so we don't get stung. So we went out, it's called a bee ball. It was in a tree in a neighbor's yard a couple of days ago, about the size of a basketball. So it's a ball of bees, and there's going to be a queen in the very middle of that. So my son and I walked over, grabbed an empty hive, and we don't have suits on, or bee suits or smokers or anything like that, and just basically, I had him hold the box under it. I got up a little bit higher on the ladder so I could reach it, and then just shook the branch really hard so this basketball-sized bee ball dropped into the hive, and on us, of course. And then we just put the lid on, and then, boom, you have another beehive now, and you can set it down. And again, because of shungite bees, we had no stings whatsoever, no issues. If bees aren't diseased and sick and angry and struggling, well, they're not going to get in fights. They're not going to get mad. Just like us. If you're healthy and happy, you're going to be calmer and, you know, get along with everybody. Yeah, no, that's cool enough. I would suggest that people who are inexperienced obviously don't do anything like that, obviously, unless you know what you're doing. You're better off going down the route of getting advice and actually speaking to your local beekeeper and getting some support. Going up to beehives and shaking trees to kick them off, get them off the tree. It's not a good idea if you don't know what you're doing, because they might be surrounded by shunga and they might go after you and sting you. So you're going to have to be very careful. Well, it's great information regarding the honey, and I'd like to see more evidence of using the honey from a health point of view, and from obviously sores or any cuts or bruises and stuff like that. And I know as you said, you have a load of videos there that
I'd like to see as well, if you can send them links over after the show, or when you have time, send them over to us. I'd like to see that. And I'm not saying I'd be interested in setting up a beehive, but I think the whole process is very fascinating and interesting, and I think the bees are very important to us. Now, you know, over here, I mean, we just have the honeybee, Steve, I think, and we have the brown wasps. And to this day, I don't know why we have wasps, because they don't do anything. Unless you know something more than us, Derek.
I'm sitting here laughing because that's kind of funny. No, the only thing I know they do is really harm my bees and sting us. Very, very little pollination, just because they happen to land on some flowers here and there. But no, I don't know if I don't have much use for them, unfortunately.
Well, I suppose in the great scheme of things that they obviously serve a purpose, wouldn't they? I mean, they have to do something.
They'd have to be part of the food chain in some way, because they don't. I mean, why else would they be there?
I know birds eat them, so that must, I mean, I can't imagine they're just for that, but we do see the birds eat them, but yeah, I don't really know.
Yeah, okay, that's a weird one. Steve, you got a question there?
Yeah, question, I think this is probably going to be the final question. Joan says, has Derek, Walt and Nancy received any threats from environment groups, farmer groups, etc., in relation to using this amazing product?
No threats that I'm aware of any kind. Just what, is often referred to as trolls online that, and you never know really where those originate from, but no real threats. Just no, I don't know that enough people are aware of us so anybody would really consider it a threat at this point, so.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, what about shunga powder if you mixed it in with, your coconut oil and your sodium bicarb for toothpaste?
Yeah, so we actually do have a toothpaste on there, just like you mentioned, and that works really, it's different than a normal toothpaste, so it doesn't lather up, but it works really well. And again, I like to refer back to the fact that the scientists at the nuclear disaster in Japan, Fukushima, they're using shungite, the actual shungite, there to deal with the radiation. I mean, they're using it for a reason. It's not because it's not working. So that alone tells you, well, there's something to that. Now, whether it's all released or not, I don't know, but it does work really well externally, and even, well, I guess internally on your teeth, we've used it as well. Yeah,
I think you'd have to probably get some, maybe peppermint essential oil that you can throw into there, just to give it kind of a minty taste, and then do it that way. I have tried it. I have tried the sodium bicarb and the water, and making up kind of a paste and brushing your teeth, but it's very gritty and it doesn't taste nice at all. I think getting the essential oils would be ideal. But then you have to experiment with these things, don't you? You have to try different scenarios.
You'll never change over the years. If it doesn't taste nice, you don't like you won't do it, will you?
Hey, look, I have a sensitive palate. What can I say?
Derek, we went through a phase here, and obviously we still do it from time to time, of juicing, and we had many guests on talking about the benefits of juicing, and like one of the benefits, one of the great juices was cabbage juice. And they said if you juice cabbage, that there's a lot of vitamin C in cabbage. And we tried it, and obviously it doesn't taste very nice, but the benefits far outweigh the taste. Well, as far as I'm concerned, but not Alan.
It doesn't taste very nice. I don't think you've any taste buds at all, because you drank it down and just went, oh God. No, look, I mean, I know it's very good for you, but isn't it funny how all the stuff that's good for you tastes foul, and all the bad stuff tastes nice?
Well, how about if you were to get the cabbage juice and put some organic honey in it? That'd sweeten it.
Well, that would sweeten it up a bit. Well, maybe. I mean, maybe this is what we need to do. Maybe we need to get these organic foods and put them together and see, what we can do with them to get a nice taste.
The ultimate concoction exists. We just haven't found it yet.
Yeah. Well, no, we're on the hunt. We'll always be willing to try stuff and try it out and see what happens. So maybe organic honey with, I don't know, have you come across people using your honey with, juicing or other ingredients to help up on that?
Or in other strange ways, maybe, like?
Just different concoctions, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually, we do that ourselves here, as well as other customers, we will juice as well, and we'll put the shunga honey in there. And we're big on drinking it pretty quickly, because the longer it sits, of course, once you extract it, well, the second you pull that fruit or vegetable from the plant, the vitamins and minerals start to diminish. So you don't necessarily want to make a week's worth of juice and put it in your fridge. By the end of the week, it's going to be gone, so maybe make it each morning sort of thing. And then that's when we'll add the honey as well. But I do want to know, if you add the honey to juices, don't do it a week out, because the organic honeys do have those beneficial bacteria and enzymes, and if you're introducing that to a juice, there could be other. I would drink it right away is pretty much my point on that. And we have the energetic qualities from that and adding an organic honey are phenomenal to a juice. So it's a great idea, and we do it ourselves. And then you asked about other products. I'm not sure what they're called, but they're little honey candies. So we have a few people that are making small little snack candies out of honey, and you can Google it. There's different ways of doing it, but you can add the honey. So think in essence, a little energy bar or a little energy treat, if you needed, made out of organic honey that you can eat during the day. It's more convenient than... Oh,
okay. What about an ice pop? What about putting the honey in one of these in the freezer? In one of these ice pop makers where you can pour in the honey, put a little stick on it, and put it in the freezer and let it freeze, and then you can use it as a kind of cool ice pop.
That's interesting. I've never tried to freeze honey. I don't know what that would do. I might have to try that. That
would be interesting for kids. Kids like the sweet thing, but they're getting say, well, here's an ice pop, and it's the good stuff, not the chemicals that you get from the supermarket or the local newsagent. That might be interesting. I don't know. I mean, can't honey freeze? I assume it does.
We'll have to try.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also use it for our hummingbird feeders. So rather than, it's much more beneficial than using sugar for your birds or hummingbirds, use the honey or whatever type of honey you got and mix it with water and then put that in there, and then the bees will come to it as well. So even if you want to feed your bees or local bees, you can make what's called bee bread, get cornbreads and honeys, and again, there's lots of recipes online, but you can make that for your local bees and just set it out. So in essence, it looks like a piece of bread, and it's a type of bee bread that you can make for them. So there's lots of things you can do.
Wow, okay. Well, that's interesting. Well, there's an experiment. Definitely tracking down the organic honey with a local beekeeper would be the first point to call. I know local supermarkets do honey, but I'm not sure if they do organic, is it a local, business, or is it just another manufactured, they'll call it organic, but it'll be manufactured, because we always say about when you go into your local superstore, and you on one side is all the health food products, and you kind of say, well, if that's all the health food products, what are the chemicals in all the other food? But when you go to the health food side, and you look at some of the products that are there, which are supposed to be healthy, they're full of E numbers.
That's true, yeah.
And you just think, well, what's the point in that? It's supposed to be healthy food and full of E numbers, and God knows what else. So that's why I think even if people go over to the health section, see if there's a local source for it rather than a known manufacturer or something. I think that's what we'd have to do. Or speak to the people in the shop, I suppose. But I'm going to Google, during the week now, I'm going to Google to see if I can find a local company that are doing it. That would be quite interesting. I haven't heard of any around, Steve, have you?
Well, there is Boyne Valley.
Yeah.
Boyne Valley are supposed to cover this area.
But they're well known, aren't they?
Boyne Valley is a multinational, yeah.
It's a massive company,
it is, yeah.
They do a lot of honey, so I'd say that's going to be heavily processed. I'd
imagine so.
Yeah, I think the honey with the water in the ice pop would be a good idea. But getting the organic honey would be a good idea. Right, Derek, well, we've reached that time. And it's... Oh, and another question, go ahead.
Okay. Well, we have one question, and then we know we want you to go back to something else that you spoke of earlier. Very last question. Joan is wondering, real honey can last for years. Is this true, Derek?
It is. There's actually no expiration on it. So as long as it's, again, it has to be 100% honey, because anything it's cut with is what would go bad. But if it's pure unprocessed, so it has to be that unprocessed or pasteurized, You don't want it cooked. It will last indefinitely. And it's also the one food that humans could live off of with nothing else. You don't even need water. You can literally live off of just honey for your entire life and never drink water because of the water percentage that's in it. So that's kind of an interesting little note.
That is, for preppers, that's very interesting. That would be a good idea. And what's the best way to store honey? Because I know before I've put honey in the fridge, and then you take it out and it's just all gloopy and very thick and, you know, not nice.
Mm-hmm. It really depends on your preference, because it's not going to make a difference if it crystallizes. Again, if it's real honey, it will harden. So I would worry if you left honey in a jar sitting next to your, say, stovetop, and it got warm and it didn't harden, or it got cold, and it can go either way. But if it didn't harden, then it's probably not real honey. So the best way to store it, it would be depending on how you want it. So if you want it for your toast or something, keep it not in the fridge, in a warmer environment, so it's spreadable. But again, if it does harden and crystallize, well, make sure it's in a glass jar now. Just get a boiling pot of water, submerge it halfway, and slowly bring that water up to a simmer, and that honey it'll turn liquid again. And then you can reuse it that way. And you can do that as many times as you want. As long as you don't get it to the point of boiling, you're not removing that beneficial bacteria and enzymes that are in it. So just a slow heating process, and you can bring it back. Okay, well, that's good to know, because I always seem to... I normally just put it in the fridge for, I don't know, just, I suppose, from being a kid watching my mother doing it. And when you have honey, you just put it in the fridge. But I find that when you take it out, it just seems to be very kind of thick and gloopy. Well, that's good to know. Well, Derek, we've reached that time in the evening, and we do, before we get all your details and do that, and go through all your website details, just explain to our listeners again how to test the honey. So if they go and buy honey, how they can test it to see if it's any good. Sure. And I wanted to mention one other way. So the ways we went over, so if you take your honey and just get a clean glass of water that's room temperature, and just do the one drop in there and let it fall to the bottom. And if it holds its structure in a somewhat a drop form, then you can have the real honey. But if it basically falls apart, loses its shape, or dissipates into the water, it's going to be cut with something else, a sugar, fructose corn syrup. And then I'm not sure if I mentioned the burn test. So if you have real honey as well, you can get a small toothpick, a spoon, anything really, and just dab a little bit of honey on there, and you can light it, and it'll burn if it catches on fire, and it'll be almost invisible flame if it's really pure honey. And that's another test. And if it was fake honey, it's just simply not going to light. It's just going to kind of melt and go everywhere. So a real, true, uncut, meaning they don't percentage it out with something else, will burn. And then it'll also have the drop test and the water are the two best ways to test it. And funny enough, you saying that, do you remember the old movies, maybe, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, when they might have a movie, I've seen this in the movies, where it's either the Mummy or a dinosaur movie, or they go to this island where they have prehistoric animals, and they're in the cave, and they're giant bees or something. I remember this, it just coming to mind, and they dip the branch of a tree in honey, and then they set it on fire so they can go through the cave. That's, You're a strange man, misspent youth watching TV. But I remember that. It was either on The Mummy or one of these movies where they actually did that. And you just mentioned there setting it alight. Okay, we've reached that time. Derek, thanks a lot for coming on the show. Brilliant information and about beekeeping and about honey and all the things you can do and be, shungite, especially in the properties of shungite and what you can do. I hope our listeners have learned a lot. We have, and we're definitely going to be trying different things out. But thanks again for coming on the show. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get all your contact information and where people can find you. Steve. Yeah, Derek, I want to echo those sentiments as well, and a lot of positive comments on the chat room as well. Please have Derek on again. Fantastic show, says Joan. Thanks for that, Joan. And I have to say it's been a very informational show this evening. A lot of good information from a lot of different points of view, and a lot of, in relation to the bees and from the shungite. So yeah, we have learned a lot. We do have the website there, shungitebeehives.com, and if anyone else wants to get in touch and maybe purchase, we have shungitehoney.com. So those links are up on both of the chat rooms there for everyone to see and visit the sites. Any other links, Derek, that you have there that you want to throw out before we go or before we leave you this evening? Yeah, I'd like to mention on at cosmicreality.net we have what are called shunga bee kits. So you can actually, if you're a beekeeper or you're going to start, we've preset little packages of nuggets and powder and some instructions that you can start with and just kind of start from there. So it's really, really quick way to get up and running.
Brilliant stuff. That's fantastic. Okay, Derek, stay with us there for a minute. We're just going to go off to a musical break and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com and peoplesinternetradio.com.
Okay, and we're back. It was great information there from Derek Condit. If you want to find out a lot more about Derek, you can check out the websites shungitebeehives.com and also shungitehoney.com. And if you want to go to YouTube, you can type in Derek's name, and yeah, I'm sure you will find a lot of his videos over there also.
Brilliant stuff. Right, our guest next week, two people. We've Tony Minavero and Dr. Goldman, and they're going to be talking about protection of our water supplies worldwide, because our water supply is apparently under threat. When we know they're trying to privatise the water over here in Ireland with Dennis O'Brien and his private companies and charges for water when we're already paying it through our taxes. So we're paying for water twice, and that's why there was a big protest in Dublin a few years ago, where everybody went in to protest about the water. But did the politicians listen to us? Of course not. God, you don't want to be listening to them people there, they're peasants. You don't want to be listening to them, even though they were voted in by the Irish people to do the Irish people's bidding. No, we got in, so now we're going to ignore you, and we're just going to do what the cabal want us to do. And we're going to charge you for water, even though you're paying it in your taxes already. And then, to add salt into the wounds, you know, we're going to charge you road tax, and we're going to take a percentage of that and give it to Irish Water as well, just to kind of kick sand in your face again. Brilliant, isn't it? Our Irish government, don't you just love them? The politicians. Anyway, all that has to come down. That's 3D thinking. We have to get away from that, move into the 5D, and we have to change our way of thinking. You know, and I do like Trump's approach. You know, the whole, I'm not going to bow to the Queen, and his wife as well, Melania, didn't bow either. Fair play to him. Why should he bow? You know, who is she? She's only a human being like everybody else. It's the royalists, obviously, that are upset over it, you know. And then the 100,000 or whoever it was, the amount of people in Trafalgar Square, giving out about Trump. I don't know. Are they missing something? We seen something, you know, that, they're not? I don't know. Maybe they're funded by George Soros. You know, he does a lot of funding. Apparently, maybe some of them are funded by Soros. But there you go. That's the plan of attack for next week, for the guests for next week. So we'll find out all about water and the protection of water, and we'll get into that. Now, you have something that you want to read out there, Steve?
My memoirs.
Your memoirs.
Now I just want to give a shout out to Monday. That's Monday the 16th of July. L3 Amigos. That's Fairport, Graham and Joan. Will be joined by John Wedger, ex-detective constable of the Metropolitan Police, and a whistleblower. And that's tomorrow night, Monday evening, on People's Internet Radio. So put that in your file of facts, and do tune in. I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic show. So.
Well, John Wedger was a whistleblower, that he was exposing the paedophile rings and the people in high society, and was told to shut up, and, you know, got the higher rankings of the upper society. So it should be a good interview, folks. Tune in and listen to John. But it was educational tonight, I have to say, Steve. I did learn a bit about beekeeping and honey and hives, so definitely get the videos off Derek and have a chat with him. Maybe doing another interview, get an update, but definitely look at the videos anyway and see what's going on with the beehives. Now, we have a couple of guests that we're trying to sort out and get on the show. One of them is, there seems to be an awful lot of talk at the moment in the papers, obviously, about the vaccines, the HPV vaccines, the Gardasil vaccines, and the damage. And I did get an article sent over by a listener, JJ, who said that the Japanese nation, or the Japanese government, is querying the fact that they are causing damage, apparently, and they're coming out and saying it and letting people know about it. We actually asked Jonathan Irwin, who's the founder of the Jack and Jill Foundation, to come on the show, which he's agreed to. Said he was more than happy to come on. We're going to do a full interview with Jonathan, because his daughter was affected by was it HPV vaccine, if memory serves me well. And he has brought her all around the place. I know Germany was the last time he was telling us to try and cure her of HPV, but he's had no success with that. And maybe there is alternatives that we can try. I know we've talked about it in the past, about heavy metals and what the vaccines cause. So obviously we need to get rid of them heavy metals. Maybe there's a way of doing it. So it'll be interesting to find out. But we have Jonathan Aaron coming on, and he's going to talk to us about that. And we also have another lady coming on in a few weeks' time, and she does a product called Jilly Juice. And apparently, again, this was told to us by a listener, and she has been attacked by the government over there in America, because obviously this Jilly Juice is very beneficial. And if you go to Google and type in Jilly Juice, you'll come across the website there. You can actually have a look at it. But so we've asked her to come on.
Is that G or J?
I think it's Jilly. And we've asked her to come on the show to tell us all about the juice and what's in it, how to do it, or where to buy it, and find out all about it. So that's the plan of attack. So we have a list of other guests as well that we have to approach, we have to get on, have a chat to. Who else is coming on? Oh, we have a few other guests coming on as well. It's in the pipeline, so we're going to get a few more in and over the week. So we just keep them busy doing what we're doing. As we said, we had the United We Start marathon yesterday. If you want to listen to that, we had a great chat. There was 5 of us on there. We were talking about everything. Even the 31st of July, is it true, is it false, is it propaganda, is it going to happen? I know there's eclipses happening this month. I think there's 3 or 4 eclipses happening this month, and there's a lot going on. People are saying the energies are changing, it's affecting people. After all, that's where you get lunatic from Luna, from the sun, or from the moon, I should say. So there seems to be a lot of people on YouTube talking about the energy changes and the eclipses that are happening and having a major effect on the planet. So check in the unitedwestart.org, go out to the website, go into podcasts. The latest podcast is there. And again, we hope to do the food bank with Ken Smollen in the next few weeks. Ken's going to drive up to us, and we're going to pay a visit to the local shop and do a shop for Ken, because he's doing a great job down there with struggling families. Folks, it's amazing the horror stories that you hear. We spoke to Ashleen yesterday, and she was telling us a couple of stories of families struggling for food, and it's just a nightmare. And the amount of evictions that are going through this week alone, I think somebody posted up there was 229 evictions going through the courts. It just has to stop. It's just unbelievable. But maybe one day we'll sort something out. But I'll let you go, pass you over to Steve. For myself, Alan James, take it easy. Have a great week. If you have any information, email us, let us know. Hope you enjoyed the show. Catch you next week. Bye bye.
Yeah, the email address info@oymradio.com. So if you are listening to this show for the first time, fire us off an email just to say hi. Just let us know where you're tuning in from. Steve Roberts is up next on People's Internet Radio, and I wanted to say thanks to everyone who joined us on both of the chat rooms this evening. It was absolutely fantastic having you there. So Steve's up next on PIR, and don't forget 9 o'clock tomorrow night also on PIR L3 Amigos. Until next week, take care. Bye bye.